to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you everybody for sticking with me. Over the past couple of seasons, I've had the honor of being able to interview other families, parents, organizations with a like-minded mission of ending pediatric cancer, or at least making a massive difference in this community. And I would say that meeting these amazing people and doing these interviews is the silver lining that we all look for in whatever situation we are in. The pediatric cancer community is not something that we ask to be a part of, but once we are in it, I have not found any stronger group of people ever on this planet. So today is my guest is somebody that I've had the honor of hearing speak at the Childhood Cancer Caucus in D.C. each year. And if you haven't heard of that, please look into it. And also, I heard the speech this year at Cure Fest at the Festival of Lights and Freedom Plaza that was really moving because it was so intense and something that you want to get out there and we want to make a big difference. And sometimes we feel like we have to yell at the people that aren't listening to get them to hear what we're saying. So today, my guest is Gavin Lindberg, the president of the Evan Foundation, and I will introduce you and allow you to kind of explain a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, Curtis, it's great to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for this platform for the childhood cancer community. And I want to acknowledge your daughter, JC, and her journey and her courage and your family's courage as well. I'm here in Germantown, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., and I'm here because of my son, Evan. Evan was our only child. And, I could go on all day about Evan. Just the most intelligent, funniest, certainly courageous, curious, compassionate little boy you ever wanted to meet. Loved dinosaurs, loved monster trucks, loved beating his dad at driveway hockey and video games, and loved to laugh. Had the most wonderful, infectious laugh, and Evan was the light of our lives. And everything was perfect until it wasn't. So I'll take you back to the fall of 2006. Evan was 3 years old, and he started to experience really severe leg pain. And I won't go through the whole diagnosis journey, but I remember his pediatrician, we had been in to see her a couple of times with this leg pain issue. She had been in practice for over 30 years, an incredible woman. And I'll never forget it. She said, "I'm going to call someone smarter than me to ask about your son." And I knew then that something was going on. And the advice that she got was to take Evan to our local hospital here to get a CT scan of his abdomen. And within minutes of that scan being performed, we were told that Evan had a large mass in his abdomen, specifically on his right adrenal gland. And that night we were admitted to the oncology floor of Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., and a few days later got an official diagnosis of stage 4 neuroblastoma. And for those who don't know what neuroblastoma is, I envy you. I think, one of the most simple ways to put it is neuroblastoma, high-risk neuroblastoma is one of the worst diagnoses that a family can get. It's just a devastating, deadly, evil, cowardly pediatric cancer that strikes young children like my son. And that diagnosis started us off on a 4-year journey. I call it 4 years of courage, Curtis, because that's what it was with Evan. Just 4 years of nonstop treatment, not a day off. He was either in treatment or recovering from treatment. And as you know well, frequently the recovery is worse than the treatment itself, right? So we spent, again, the next 4 years between 2006 and 2010, really going up and down I-95, looking for something that was going to help our son. And what I mean by that is we spent a lot of time at Children's National in D.C., a lot of time at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, a lot of time at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, two of the world's premier neuroblastoma research and clinical institutions. Gosh, you throw in an emergency brain surgery on the other end of 95 in Florida on a spring break. Yeah, just constant treatment that we can certainly go into if you're interested. What I learned about my son is I don't think there's ever been a more courageous person ever on the face of the earth. What he endured it's really unspeakable. And I find it not only medically unacceptable, but morally unacceptable, what children like Evan go through and that JC go through. And at the end of that 4-year journey, treatment finally failed our son. And he passed away in the fall of 2010. And he was 7 years old. And like yourself, I continue his fight and my wife continues his fight in memory of our child. And we're trying to make a difference for kids like him and families like ours.
Right. And I think you're doing amazing work. And like I said, to be able to hear you speak about it each year at the Cancer Caucus, as well as hearing it at Freedom Plaza, at Cure Fest and things like that, it definitely is, it's inspiring because a lot of people in our position don't really come out of the darkness once it happens. And there's really no way to grieve when you lose a child. There's no right or wrong way, but a lot of people choose to kind of not be in the front lines of it. And we kind of get asked a lot of questions, and I'm sure you do too, is why do you continue to do this? And the answer for me is we're not fighting for JC anymore because we couldn't save her, but we're fighting for all the kids that are going to be diagnosed moving forward, and for all the research that we don't think is happening and the money that we know is not going to it. We're fighting for them. And, JC had a 520-day battle, and from day one to the day she passed. And it was something that she also did with a smile on her face. I can't even understand it. I can't explain it. These kids go through the worst times of their life. And I often make the joke that the man flu is a real thing, and it will put us on the couch and we'll complain about it all day. But yet these kids go through the worst treatments of their life, and we're told as parents, God, don't get the chemo on you, don't get any of this. You can't do, because it can do this to you and all that. But they're smiling and they find a way. It's that genuine kind of true hearts that they have that we're missing in this world right now, that I wish we had so much more of. And they put us on they give us a perspective on life that I just don't think you'll find anywhere else.
I couldn't agree more. They're teaching us all a lesson, right? And on a daily basis, I was just dumbfounded at how my son dealt with this. And I try to, as I move forward in life, remember that courage. Curtis, I'll tell you, some days it's easier than others, right? But whenever you start to feel like, gosh, are we really making the impact that we want to make? How do we keep doing this? You just think about what your kid went through. And then it's easy, right? The second I start thinking about what Evan endured, then, I'm going to get my butt off the couch and try to do something every single day. And, I completely understand those families who, once they get on the other side of this, whether it's, when they become a bereaved parent or if their child survives, and they say, I don't want to ever have anything to do with this world again. I get that. And I totally respect that. I understand it. But for my wife and me, it was just the opposite. We wanted to not only continue Evan's fight, but I don't think that I could live with myself if I was sort of just going on, my everyday without trying to make a difference for kids like him. And that, that's just me. But I certainly felt that from really day one after we lost Evan. And it's amazing. I think people who don't really know our community, you would think, gosh, this is full of sadness and tragedy and despair. And those things are certainly present, unfortunately, all too often. But I think you touched on it well. You're never going to be more inspired by a group of people in your life than children with cancer. You just aren't. And it's such how to put it, it's such an unfortunate blessing, maybe is the right way to put it, to have the opportunity to spend time with these kids like we do. Because you wish, beyond everything, that they would not have to endure the fight that they're enduring. But at the same time, you're just inspired, and it puts everything in perspective. And I'm so grateful that you're shining a light on what these kids go through this podcast and this platform, because more people need to know. And one of the things that drives me and my wife in our mission is, this whole crisis, and I will call it a crisis, of childhood cancer, the leading cause of death by disease among children, unbelievable toxicity that kids endure, the fact that, by the time survivors are 45, they have a 95% likelihood of having a significant debilitating health issue. The average number of years lost when we lose a child to cancer, 70 plus years. Think about my son, 7 years old, right? He falls into that category. This is a crisis. And it's a crisis not only for individual children and families, but it's a crisis for the country. These kids are our future. right? And this is a crisis, and we're not treating it as one. And that's really the point I'm trying to make. We're not treating it as one. We're not investing in these kids. We're not, frankly, serving them and doing them justice based on what they're going through. And that's another factor that, I'm sure like yourself really drives my wife and me to get up every day and try to make a difference, because more people need to know about what your daughter went through, what my son went through, so we can hopefully, moving forward, figure out a way to ensure that other children don't have to go through it.
Yes, I agree 100%. More people need to realize how prevalent this problem really is. Like, this to me is the true pandemic. This is the true epidemic of our time. These kids are going through unimaginable things every single day, and nobody's talking about it, or they're afraid to talk about it. It's almost like if you ignore it, it can't possibly happen to me. And the reality of it is, right, that we weren't cancer parents until the day we were. There was no reason to believe that, that our daughter having constipation meant she had brain cancer. There was no link there. That, leg pains, that just irritability. There's no reason to believe that these symptoms growing up, I grew up in the 80s. You rub dirt on it and walked it off, right? It's like nobody to believe these types of symptoms would lead to something this serious. And it's because we're not talking about it, and people are afraid to talk about it. And the people that are supposed to be making the biggest impact are the people that are writing the legislations, and half of them don't even know why we're even there in September. And that's alarming to me, to go and meet with people, to go and talk to them, to go to their offices, knock on doors, and have them have no idea why we're there. At the same time, looking at pictures of 5, 6 kids on their desk and questioning in my mind, do I say it could be any one of those kids any day, or do I not say that yet? But I feel like we're at a time where you have to say that. I don't want anybody to ever understand what we've gone through as parents, losing a child. But I want you to realize that it is an absolute reality for so many people. And to say any point that it's getting better is not right. I mean, when JC was diagnosed in 2020, I believe that the national number was 43 kids a day, and I believe it's up to 47 now. It's not getting better. It's getting worse because we're not putting enough effort into it. We're not putting enough eyes on it. And we need to find a way to get people to just realize that these kids are going to be the only reason that we survive moving forward. They're the doctors that we're losing, the pilots, the scientists, all the judges, the presidents. We're losing them every single day. And I know our daughter's dream was to be a NICU nurse. That was what she wanted to be. And so many of these survivors that I've spoken to are going into the medical field, and that's what we need, because they've got insight that so many don't have.
Well, that's so well said, and I'll share with you that, and I'll talk a little bit about the Evan Foundation, as we go. But one of the initiatives that our organization has is a college scholarship program, and this is open to either survivors of a high-risk cancer or a current patient of a high-risk cancer who is graduated from college and on their way to a 4-year institution. And we have 9 scholarship winners over 3 years, and to a person, Curtis, to a person, they are all going into a field dedicated to making life better for kids like that, children with cancer. They want to be oncologists, nurses, child life professionals, pediatric anesthesiologists, clinical geneticists, on and on and on. That spirit of giving back. We have one winner who is focused on biomechanical engineering to develop better prosthetics for children and adults who have to have amputations due to their cancer treatment. And these kids have a perspective on life that very few people have. And they're all, in my view, they're all heroes, but they're all destined for greatness. I mean, these people are motivated, and they're going to do things that you can't even imagine. And it makes you wonder, with great sadness, what would JC have become, and what would the difference be that she would make? And I know it would be significant. I feel the same way about Evan. He was destined for great things. And I know every father says that, but I know that. And I know you know that. And that's why, as challenging as it is, I think everyone just needs to understand the value of raising your voice, the power that one person can have. It's amazing what happens when one person speaks up and doesn't take no for an answer. And that reminds me, I have the privilege of giving a lot of talks across the country to various audiences. And when I speak to clinicians and investigators, one of the talks that I give, it's called Lessons from Evan. And I go through a series of lessons that I learned from my son that I would like them to learn too. And one of those lessons is be a disruptor. Don't accept the status quo. If you got to piss somebody off to make progress, piss somebody off. Now, I think of John Lewis and the whole concept of get in good trouble, right? He, of course, was talking about the civil rights movement, but I take that point in our world, Curtis, right? There's a time to raise your voice, be a disruptor, and stand up for these kids because they can't stand up for themselves. And that's another piece of this that's so frustrating, right? You look at these kids who are so sick and in such a difficult situation, and gosh, you just wish that people who had the ability to, make important decisions, drive investment, and drive support for these kids could actually be at the bedside every day, like you and I were. Then things would start to change, right? So we as difficult as it is, we have to be their voice.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be I was happy to be my daughter's voice and her advocate. And, I always look back on it now and think, was I loud enough then? Was I impactful enough then? What could I have done? And the what if questions are just something it's an unfortunate side effect of all this. You're never going to get away from it. But I love the idea of kind of be a disruptor. It's because it makes so much sense, because I've often said kind of the same thing, that if you have to be annoying enough to get people to listen to you, if that's what it takes, if you have to be a pain, then you be a pain. At some point, they're going to sit down and listen just because they want you to leave, but they're going to hear what you have to say, and they're going to remember it when you leave. And the reality of it is this world, this community is so strong and loud, but we all have to be screaming the same thing in order for people to listen. And that's something that made a lot of sense a few years ago, that I actually heard Dean Crow say, that if we're all screaming different things, nobody's listening because it's just noise. But if we're all screaming the same thing, then we're going to be more impactful. And I really take that to heart. And that's kind of, this podcast gives me that option, or that opportunity, to allow people to kind of talk about their experiences. And to me, every single one of these episodes has lined up, whether it's diagnosis, it's misdiagnosis, it's legislation, it's doctor's bedside manner, that's up and down when it comes to kids, and the people you meet along the way. Child life specialists, I think, are angels on this planet that were only put here for that reason, and they're incredible people. And in fact, our 16-year-old daughter is studying to do that right now, and that's what she hopes to go into after high school. And it melts my heart, because I know how impactful it was to see those people being around her sister, and it gives her a drive. And so many people, like I said, that I've spoken to are going into these fields because they want to make a difference, and they've got an insight. When you talk about the scholarship program too, if we go back to that for a second, I know that we as an organization are starting to really think about what other how many more irons we can throw in the fire, really, if you want to put it that way, and how we can make more of an impact. And that's something that we've talked about. So actually, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that, and to go into detail, maybe how it works and how people apply for it, and how you really choose where that offering is going to go.
Yeah, happy to. So we put out a wide call for applications to be submitted. We do this every year. So we have a 6-week window, March 15th through May 1st. And the criteria are really kind of straightforward. You have to be, as I said earlier, a survivor or a patient with a high risk of pediatric cancer. And you have to be a high school senior on your way to a 4-year institution in the fall as a freshman. And our written applications, it's pretty intensive. We ask for a lot because our investment is a lot. We give every winner $10,000, and for us, that's a lot of money. And it's really challenging because you get, all of these wonderful written applications with essays and, all of your academic credentials and letters of reference, et cetera, et cetera. And, then it's up to our committee to weed through those. And, depending on the year, we'll get, 40 or 50 applications, and you have to whittle it down to the finalists. And that's difficult because really you want to give them all a scholarship because you know what they've been through, right? But we have a list of criteria that we use. Financial need is one of them. And then we determine our finalists, and then our committee actually takes the time, and I'm proud of this, we take the time to spend time with each of the finalists with an interview. So we will get on a Zoom meeting with each finalist individually and spend about an hour getting to know them. I'd call it an interview, but that's too formal. It's a conversation, right? It's just getting to know these kids. And then we have the difficult task at the end of it of determining, who's going to win. And our budget, we've been fortunate that we've increased the number of awards every year. The first year it was 2. The second year it was 3, and this year it was 4 winners. So we make that judgment, based on our budget for the year for the program, and then we announce the winners on July 1st. And one of the really cool things about this program is we get to know these kids throughout their whole college journey, because we structure the support per year. So I said, in total we're giving each winner $10,000, but we're doing that by giving them $2,500 a year for 4 years, right? And so as the years go by, one of our requirements is that they keep in touch with us at least annually with a brief written update on how things are going, what their past year was like, what their upcoming year looks like, et cetera, et cetera. And watch these kids grow and flourish. And I guess our first class, our juniors now, it's just remarkable. And they're thriving, not only with their studies, but, with their social life and, Greek life or club life, whatever it is they're into. And it's really, it just warms your heart. And the final thing I'll say about this quickly is we started this program knowing that when we started it, Evan would have been going to college, right? He was of that age, and it's really devastating to think about that. So we named it after Evan and another neuroblastoma patient, wonderful young man named Eric Ledwinski. And Eric, he was diagnosed with neuroblastoma as a young boy, had a really, really difficult fight at the beginning, and was able to get clear of disease and had many years, I think it was 10 or 12 years of being free of disease, and he was in college, and it returned, just tragically returned. And Eric passed away the same year that Evan passed away in 2010 when he was in college. And Eric's mother, Donna Ledwinski, is on our board. So our college scholarship program is named in honor of Evan and Eric. And it's one of the great things that we do. And it brings us a lot of joy.
I think it's incredible. And I think, to give, obviously they're getting an opportunity to kind of move forward with their life and not let it define them, but really to own what they're doing, and to have a scholarship program like that, I think is incredible. One day, I don't know when it'll happen, but one day I would love for our organization to be able to do that and give back, in that way too. It's something I think that's incredibly important to support the furthering of education for these kids and what they've gone through, and they deserve it. As far as I'm concerned, whatever respect they've earned every bit of it from us, and that's the way that we can support them. I love that. So that's truly something I hope we can do one day. That's important. So you reposition. So you mentioned about, obviously the Evan Foundation. So what else where did the Evan Foundation start? And then what more do you do? Obviously the scholarship program is a small piece of it, I guess, in a sense. So what does the Evan Foundation do?
Yeah, so we were started in 2011, not long after Evan passed. And yeah, the mission is simple, right? It's bring joy to children battling cancer today and drive progress for a better tomorrow. And we do that really in 3 areas. So one is patient and survivor wellness. The second is research, and the third is advocacy and education. And the scholarship program falls under the patient and survivor wellness bucket. I'll talk about another program briefly. And, if you were to ask me, what is it that the Evan Foundation does day in and day out that has an impact? It's the Treats and Treasures Cards program, without a doubt. And this is the most simple thing you could ever imagine. And the name kind of gives it away, right? This is giving kids with cancer and blood disorders a break from treatment, a moment of control and empowerment in an environment where everything is, being done to them, and something to look forward to by offering them these Treats and Treasures cards. And I'll tell you how this started. So way back in 2012, Wendy and I started rounding the Treats and Treasures cards so that we developed and paid for through the foundation on the hematology oncology floor at Children's National Hospital. So 33 rooms there on the inpatient side. And we've done that every Wednesday since April of 2012. And you add it all up, and it's something like 16,000 visits to kids on that floor. And this is just, again, it's the simplest thing in the world, and I cannot tell you the impact that it has. These kids, Wednesday is the favorite day of the week. As you know, they spend so much time in the hospital that something to look forward to is so important. And it's so much more than just the items that they get to select. Again, it's that ability to make a decision. It's that ability to have a little bit of fun, get a visit, from us, and that extends to mom and dad too, and the siblings. Everybody in the room benefits, and the feedback that we've received from this from day one has been overwhelming. Families who want to give back, I choke up thinking about it, but we have so many kids who get a little break from treatment and they go and they do a toy drive for the Treats and Treasures Cards program, or they have a birthday party or bar mitzvah or what have you, and they're generating toys for this program. We have survivors who do fundraisers. I could go on, and it's really, really an incredible thing, and it certainly is an incredible thing for Wendy and me. Every Wednesday, we get the honor of spending time with these families, and not that we need it because we've lived it, but it is a constant reminder of the plight of these families and the need to do more for them. It serves that purpose as well for us. So, when we saw the impact that this had, we decided very quickly that we wanted to expand it. And we've done that. So now we have 24 hospitals in 3 countries, actually, who treat kids with cancer and blood disorders who have the Evan Foundation Treats and Treasures Cards program. A large number of hospitals in the U.S., hospitals in Canada. We have a wonderful partner in Canada, the Kindred Foundation, that helps us spread the program in Canada. And then we have the Treats and Treasures Cart at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, UK, and that's in partnership with another great organization, Alice's Ark UK. And the common theme here is again, giving kids a break and giving them something to look forward to, and in that moment of control and empowerment. And you add it all up, and it's probably around 1,500 kids a week are benefiting from this program, either in the inpatient setting or the outpatient setting, or both in some hospitals. And if you had told me when we started this way back in 2012 that we would have this kind of impact, I never, ever would have believed you. But I see it. I see it every Wednesday, and we hear about it, again, through notes and emails and toy drives and feedback from families. So that's a big part of what we do.
And I think that is so important. It seems simple, but yet we're in the same boat as well, sending care packages to kids. And we've had that question come up before, like, you're not solving anything. You're not curing cancer. You're not putting this, that, but it's so simple that when we saw the impact that a care package had for our daughter when it came in the hospital, because that's theirs. That's the mail with their name on it can mean so much. For us, mail with our name on it means bills, right? For kids, they see a package. It's got stuff for them in it. And, when we started this in 2020, we just crossed this year over 1,000 packages that we've sent. And it's
that
incredible.
Is great.
And it means the world to us, because we know that when I get responses from parents, and we never ask for that, they'll send videos and pictures and emails and same thing and kind of let us know the impact it's having. The care package side, the Treats and Treasures Cards, that type of thing that takes their mind off what's going on even for a moment is so important for their mental health. And to kind of get out of that, we're stuck in a hospital. It doesn't always have to be scary, and it can be turned into a fun thing. So I can absolutely, feel the impact of what that does, and feel the impact of what we do, and so many organizations that are trying to just put a smile and putting a smile on the kid's face. It makes an impact that you cannot measure.
Amen. And thank you for doing what you do. I just put a sort of a final point on it. This is a couple of years ago. Wendy and I were at CureFest in Washington, and this was the Sunday program down in the mall. Wendy saw this mom who was the mom of a patient who we used to see all the time. And it had been years, hadn't seen her or her daughter, which was a good thing. And Wendy walked up to this woman. I get emotional thinking about this too. She walked up to this woman and said, a big smile on her face, and she says, "Do you remember me?" And this mom looked at Wendy and said, "Do I remember you?" She said, "I will never forget you. And my daughter won't forget you either." And she went on to tell us about how her daughter is, is thriving at college as a survivor. So just like you, Curtis, I don't need anybody to tell me the impact that something very small, seemingly small, can have. The smallest things have the biggest impact. And I've seen that firsthand.
They absolutely do. And it's, again, this is one of those things that we don't expect. We expect you have the cart, or you expect to send a package out, and really that's it. I'm not waiting for a phone call. I'm not waiting for an email. Those things are beautiful. And I guess, I had more or less a similar type of, interaction at CureFest this year at our booth, where I don't know what it was, but I had at least 3 or 4 families come up that had recognized me from social media, but also from, the pink unicorn. They know that unicorn, that logo, they know it, and they came up and to talk about that we had sent something to their child, and we had brightened their day. And, the unfortunate side is that at least a few of those families, their child had passed away, but to know that we had brought a little bit of joy to their day, in a time when it's hard to come by, and it makes such an incredible impact, not only on the community but on us personally, to know that we're able to provide that in a time when it seems often hopeful, or less than hopeful, that we're able to see anything positive happening. I had I had a really good experience, I think, in January of this year. And if we're covering, so kind of to talk about neuroblastoma a little bit, that we have the UW college system here, and I had an opportunity to go to UW-Madison to meet with a doctor that has his own lab there, and they're specifically researching neuroblastoma. And to go and literally walk around the lab, see the samples, to see the progress that's happening, and to hear them in a meeting at the end of the day. I spent the entire day there. Talk about their progress and their testing and all this. There's progress happening, but we just don't see it on the outside. And even me or you seeing it on the inside, I don't think it's happening as fast as we'd like it to. And the one word I would say to describe all of it, whether I see it firsthand, I hear about it in DC, whatever, is bittersweet. Because I know for myself and my wife to go and we listen to the speeches, and we listen at the Childhood Cancer Caucus meetings, and we're hopeful for the future, but at the same time looking at each other and going, why couldn't it have happened before? Why couldn't it have happened for JC, for Evan? Why now is all this stuff happening? And so I want to ask kind of a little bit about the research that you have supported and that you do support, and what your initiatives are right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that about Madison, University of Wisconsin, Madison. I'm sure I know the team that you visited, because I know those folks well, and they're just doing amazing work. Dr. Sondel.
That's it.
Yeah. And what a gentleman he is. Just the perfect, not only brilliant scientist, clinician, but that type of bedside manner, that you want as a parent. And I always say that we don't suffer from a lack of good ideas in the neuroblastoma world, and we don't suffer from a lack of brilliant people in the neuroblastoma research community. We suffer from a lack of money. I mean, I'll just be blunt.
Yeah.
There are some brilliant people in this field, and I have the privilege of working with a lot of them. I serve on a number of research teams as a parent advocate. Some of them are focused exclusively on neuroblastoma, more broadly on childhood cancer. These people they're leaders. They've dedicated their lives to these kids. They are just as anxious as we are. Well, maybe not as anxious as we are as parents. I don't think you could be more anxious as mom and dad, but you take my point. They want to get rid of these toxic treatments that are status quo now, and move to something that's more efficacious and less toxic. Kids, it's frustrating to me, as I know it is to you, Curtis, that so frequently kids are relegated to the back of the line in terms of research, and they should be at the front of the line. They should be prioritized, and that's what I continue to speak out about. We should be prioritizing children investments and in clinical trials, and not the other way around. But in terms of the Evan Foundation, so we, for the past few years, have really focused in two areas in our research program. One is supporting talented early career scientists in the neuroblastoma lab at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And again, as I mentioned, one of the world's premier clinical and research institutions for the disease. And this has really been an amazing thing because, gosh, this program is 10 years old now. We've had 3 scholars over the course of those 10 years, and the goal here is to take really talented, dedicated young scientists and keep them in the field of neuroblastoma, right? Make sure that they have the support they need to focus on their work and move forward in the progression of their career to become, a standalone scientist, if you will, tenured track with their own lab and their own laboratory personnel. And we've been successful in that. And one example is a gentleman named Dr. Chris Bossi, who was one of our scholars. He is now exactly what I just described, running his own lab, NIH grantee, discovering important things in the world of neuroblastoma that have led to clinical trials that wouldn't have otherwise been possible for kids. So it's exactly what we envisioned the program being when we started it. And the current scholar is a wonderful woman named Dr. Esther Burko. She is a leader in the field of liquid biopsies for neuroblastoma. So this is the idea that you can try to identify relapse disease in kids with a simple blood test, as opposed to the litany of scans that kids like Evan, and I'm assuming kids like JC, went through, CTs and the MRIs and the MIBGs and on and on and on and on and on. All those invasive things that take days and are really difficult on kids, trying to, get away from that and monitor for relapse disease using a liquid biopsy or blood test. So that's one area of focus for us in terms of research. And the other is here at Children's National Hospital in Washington. There's a wonderful gentleman, Dr. Anthony Sandler, Tony Sandler at Children's. He's actually the chief of surgery, but he's also a brilliant immunologist and head of the immunology research group there. And Tony, he got tired of taking really nasty, invasive neuroblastoma tumors out of kids, wrapped around organs and aortas and, just evil neuroblastoma tumors that Tony, had to deal with. And so he decided to kind of dedicate his lab research to the disease, and he's working on a really innovative T-cell therapy for neuroblastoma. Has been published, and we've got our fingers crossed that that's going to see the clinic here at some point soon. So those have been our 2 areas of focus. And the final thing I'll say about this is, we're not in a position to give, really large grants. One day maybe we will be. But what I can tell you universally, and you'll hear this from scientists, is that in our community, because investment from traditional sources is not what it should be, that the investment that patient organizations make is critical. We are the seed funding, if you will. We are the startup money. We are the resource that sort of gets the engine going and helps it get traction. So I always remember that and encourage people, if they want to support research, to do it, because every little bit really does make a difference.
And this is never to kind of put yourself on a pedestal or anything like that, but as organizations and families are really supporting the weight of research here, and when it comes to monetary donations and things like that, and it should be the opposite way around, right? Our wonderful DC area should be handling this on a much greater scale, and I'm not even excited to hear that the research funding is up to 8%. That doesn't excite me. That doesn't make me happy, because
Amen.
Yeah, I honestly, I know that, our congressmen and women are happy that that's doubled, but it doesn't make me happy, because that's still a horrible amount in comparison to what we're doing with the rest of that and how funding goes, and the fact that a lot of adult cancers, are understood more based on the research coming from kids, and that it doesn't seem like that's going the right direction. It should be the other way around. And so we as organizations are really, and parents and families and advocates are meant to carry the load of this, and to me it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're fortunate enough every single year to host an event here where we're able to raise money and donate it to research. And to be honest, one of the biggest no's we get for donors to donate to our event is that the money's not staying right here in our area. And I've been trying to push the idea and the understanding that this is a global issue. This is not an issue that is located in Wisconsin or in Maryland or in DC, or it's not. It's all over the place. And I've also given people the challenge to walk out of your house and walk 10 doors and try not to find somebody that's connected to this community in some way. We had no idea that we had several warriors literally within blocks of our house right around the corner. We have a Make-A-Wish house right around the corner that we had no idea that's what it was for. It's a very, very prevalent issue, and it's a global issue. And we need to really find a way to get the people that are supposed to be making these decisions to really start to push the money in the right direction. And one day I hope I have an idea, and I have, senators and representatives that I'm talking to, and I hope that an idea will work, that I can work within the UW system to make a huge difference in rare brain tumors like our daughter had, and rare tissue and things that aren't studied. And it's not to knock studies on more well-known cancers, but the rare cancers like our daughter's choroid plexus carcinoma, most people have never heard of it. And the problem is, because of that, her sample sits on file at Children's Milwaukee, where it has for the past 4 years, with, I'm assuming, dust growing on it, because nobody is attacking these. We need these amazing new scientists, these scholars that are going through these scholarship programs, these kids that are coming out of high school that want to take the road less traveled. That's the ones that I want to focus on. That's where I want to put my investments, because they want to change the world. They want to find answers to things that nobody understands. And those are the ones that I want. Those are the ones that I want to put my money behind. And hopefully one day we'll get there. And that's where we are at this point with our.
Well, I applaud you for that. And I think you've got the exact right perspective. And I've seen this firsthand based on, some of the research teams that I serve on as a patient advocate that I mentioned. There are, so many of them that are international in scope. And that's by design. So you have multidisciplinary teams, immunologists, geneticists, surgeons, on and on and on and on, different specialties who come together as a team from different parts of the world and work together on a common problem. And that's the way we're going to solve this problem, because there's not one scientist in one institution that is ever going to be able to solve my son's issue, your daughter's issue. It's going to take a team, and we need to appreciate that and not be afraid to invest in places that are outside our community, if I can, be that bold, because that's what it's going to take. Yeah, on the 8% issue, I talk about this a lot. As a community, we should feel good about that, because you and I remember when it was, a 4% number. But in no way should we be taking a victory lap and saying we've done our job, because 8% is not enough. We're talking about the leading cause of death by disease in children. And 8% of the National Cancer Institute's annual budget going towards the universe of childhood cancer is not enough. And I sing that song all the time. And I love the folks at the NCI. I work with them. I serve on a number of committees at the NCI, but I'm outspoken when I feel that kids are getting the short end of the stick. And we need to continue to do that with our friends at the NCI and our friends in the Congress. And, I quoted John Lewis a little earlier in our conversation. I'll give you another civil rights hero quote that, people who have heard me speak always hear me say this, but Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the fierce urgency of now in the civil rights movement. And that sentiment translates perfectly to what I know you felt and I felt sitting at the bedside of our kids. The fierce urgency of now. Like, tomorrow is too late for something new and better. Today is when we need it. And we need folks who understand that and have that passion and that dedication towards helping kids. And I can't think of anything more important. And I'll get on my soapbox here, as I'm prone to do on this issue, but I'm biased, but I can't think of anything more important than helping a kid battling cancer, not only from the individual's perspective of that child, but for the health of the nation, the future of the nation. And again, we're not suffering from a lack of quality proposals, meritorious scientific applications, great ideas. We're not suffering from any of that. We're suffering from a lack of investment and, quite frankly, a lack of prioritization in many instances. And the only way that changes is by folks like you and me speaking up. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do. And we're on the right side of this. Again, I'm biased, but we are on the right side of this issue. And we just need folks, to understand that. And the final thing I'll say, Curtis, is, we're not in a position at all to, take a victory lap as we discussed, but we should feel good about the progress that the community has made on the advocacy front. So over the course of, my son passed in 2010, over the course of the past 14 years, there have been great strides that have been made. And we can go on down the list, right? The increase in research funding, not enough, but still an increase. The legislation that is passed dealing with expanded incentives for the development of childhood cancer therapies, survivorship care, etc. I mean, go on and on. But that needs to be the start of a movement that continues and ends with better treatments and cures for these kids. Because my goal here is to put the Evan Foundation out of business. Before I'm dead and gone and with my son, I want to be able to look him in the eye and say I did everything I could to find a cure for the cancer that took you from us, and cancers like the one that JC had that took her from you. And that's the goal. And that's our life's work, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
We are honestly speaking the exact same words in that sense, that I have over and over said that we are kind of the antithesis of a business, right? We just want to go out of business and be done. I don't want to be here doing this because I don't want to be here doing this because I want it all to be over. We have found a cure. We have found a way to stop all this, and then we're not needed anymore. We've completed that. I ask myself the question every day, am I doing enough? Have I made enough of an impact? And I want to be able to look JC in the eye and say, I did all that I could. I did what I could for you. I did what I could for so many, and I feel good about that. And I don't want to ever have to put my head down on my pillow and think, I missed an opportunity today. I missed a chance to make an impact. And I feel at this moment that I have. And I remember, my wife asking me the question. She said, as we were trying to push legislation, which fell apart again, but I don't stop. I'll keep going. I actually like hearing the word no because it makes me work that much harder. But she said, if you get this legislation passed or if you get this initiative passed, do you feel like you've met the mission? You feel like you can stop? And the short answer is no. It just means I've gotten to that part of the mountain and I've got to go that much higher, because that gives me the motivation to push further.